talking about risk. And frankly, you know, it's one of those topics that generally doesn't get people truly, genuinely energized. What it does instead is, well, frankly, it makes people depressed. So my job is to give you a sense of what it takes to be genuinely not just good at risk management, but excellent at risk management. And specifically, the topics we're talking about today are largely embedded in one of the first documents ever created associated with risk management, and that is your personal or your project or your effort risk management plan. And in order to build a really effective risk management plan, you're going to need the elements we talk about here today. And to make it through today's presentation, you're also going to need something else on your end. And that is either a copy of Notepad up on your screen, or you're going to want a piece of paper and a pencil, because I'm actually going to give you some notes I want you to make as we go through this, because what we're going to do is we're going to help you actually craft kind of the first draft of your risk management plan. That's where we're going to go. We're going to cut to a lot of the important stuff. And the first element that is so important is guidance and just to have a clear vision as to where you're going. Most of us at some point or another have actually worked for a boss who, frankly, had no idea where he or she was going. We've had that magic moment. And you know how frustrating that was. I had one, my guy's name was Michael. And not this Michael, by the way, another Michael. His last name was Douglas. Makes him so easy to find. But Michael Douglas was what the staff called him, the office staff. We all referred to him as the Prince of Darkness. And the reason we called him that was because, well, frankly, he was mercurial. The guy would switch gears one day to the next. One day he'd be fine with the way everything was going. The next day he'd be in his office getting a tongue lashing. And it was frustrating. And if you want to take some of the frustration out of risk management, the first thing you've really got to do is have a clear sense as to what your positions are on risk, where exactly you are. You know, what exactly are you, what do you worry about, and what are you comfortable with? Work hours. Now, I have historically been an early bird. I always have been. I used to get into the office when I worked down in the D.C. area. I used to show up in the office no later than 6 a.m. I was the guy putting on the first pot of coffee. And you know those people, don't you? Oh, they're annoying. Because when everybody else is showing up, glad you could join us. You know, we're the difficult folks. And the kicker is, what happens about 3 o'clock when I'm heading out the door? All the people who came in at 9:30 or 10 are looking at me going, slacker. And all those of you who come in at 10 o'clock, when you come rolling in at 10 a.m., I don't care if you stay till 8. I'm not here to see that happen. I see you rolling at 10 a.m. What's going through my head? Slacker. It goes to organization. It goes to culture. What will I tolerate? What can I handle? And we need to know what we can handle, be it personally, organizationally. And here's a third rail thing for you. Spiritually, oh, Carl, you're not going to talk religion, are you? Not exactly, but yeah. And by that, what I mean is, what can you handle in terms of how you deal with others? It's funny. I am king of the pragmatists. I'm a big believer. If you've got something to say it and get it over with. My wife is the queen of touchy-feely. She's very, very into the whole, let's talk about the whole human contact thing. And she's very much into, people's feelings. I'd rather just get work done. But it's notable because it's a different experience personally. It's a different experience spiritually. And it's noteworthy in that if I see certain behaviors, I see them as get-her-done kind of behaviors. My wife, Nancy, my lovely bride of almost 30 years, I look at her, and she looks at it as being, you shouldn't be so hard on that person. It's like, hard on them? I just want to get it done. It's a difference in culture. We need to be the ones who know what exactly we're doing and what we're willing to tolerate and not tolerate that's going to put us and our organization and our projects at risk. And it goes to this fundamental question. What are you always willing to accept? What are you always willing to accept? Think about that question, and this is where you should start taking some notes on your own. What are you always willing to accept? Team members who do things their own way, are you willing to accept that? Now, what's interesting about that question is Beth and Brian might be sitting there going, yeah, I'm willing to accept. Team members can be loose cannons as long as they get the job done. By contrast, Christina and Chuck might be sitting there going, no way. I am the king and queen of process. I want this stuff done the right way. You know, if we tell people up front this is what we're willing to accept or not accept, it becomes kind of a mantra. It becomes something that we can culturally deal with more effectively and allow people to know how we're going to react when it comes to the risks in our organization. It may be a dollar value. It may be just a certain approach that we're always willing to accept. But be ready to think about and come up with 5 answers for this question. And you'll be surprised. This is not something you're going to get done in our hour together. But you should at least be starting to work on this and on this. Not only what you're willing to do, but what you're not willing to do. Those are 2 equally important questions. Where do you draw lines? One of my clients was one of the big construction firms, one of the international, multinational construction firms, and in working with them, it was kind of interesting. I was having trouble with a presentation, not unlike this one, only it was on the screen with the PowerPoints and the projector in a big hall, and the screen got stuck, and it wouldn't come down, and I'm pushing the button, and the screen still won't come down. And then I could see it just hanging barely off the ceiling. There was one tiny thread. One tiny thread was just barely hanging on to the corner of that screen, and that's what was keeping it from coming down. All I had to do was, like, flick it with a pencil. That was all it was going to take. So I grabbed a chair, and I was about to stand up on the chair. The reaction in the room was amazing. Every voice in the room shouted at the same time, "Carl, no!" And I stepped down off the chair and I said, "I'm sorry, what?" And I'm thinking there was something flawed in the chair that I just didn't see. And one of the guys in the front row said, he said, "Carl, you weren't going to stand on that chair, were you?" And I said, "Well, I guess not." And he said, "Well, that would be a near miss in terms of a safety incident. And we have a 0 tolerance for safety violations. You'd have been permanently barred from our site." I was like, "What?" And he said, "Yeah, if you had stepped up on that chair, you would have been permanently barred from the site. That's a safety violation." Now, I want you to think about this. I looked at that as being just, wow, that is anal retentive. But they were actually expressing exactly what we need to have early in the project, early in the work that we're doing with our teams. We need to give them a clear vision as to what we're not willing to do, what we are willing to do. If we can fill in these 10 blanks here, it's a clear line in the sand so that people know how we're going to react. It makes us less like Michael Douglas. It makes us less mercurial. It makes us less like there are no surprises here. It's all of a sudden, it's either that way or it's that way. And they know what to expect. Clarity is one of the first cornerstones of doing risk extraordinarily well. The key is it gives people expectations. They no longer see you as having, wow, she just flew off the handle. She didn't fly off the handle. She reacted the way she told you she was going to react if and when you exceeded those lines. And that's a beautiful thing. And in a good risk management plan, you're going to want to have that documented so that people know this is what they can always get away with. And this is what they can never get away with. Because if those lines are clearly drawn, it creates an opportunity for something that, frankly, I hate to even use the word, but I'll go ahead and use it, and that is empowerment. I used to go to a lot of leadership classes, and they drove me insane because they're touchy-feely, and I'm not a touchy-feely kind of guy. But I'd go to these classes, and they'd say, "You should empower your team." And my response, what the devil does that mean, empower your team? How do you actually go about doing that? Well, this is how you go about doing that. People should know that, hey, if you do the good stuff, it's all good. If you do the bad stuff, well, you're history. If you ever get the chance, Patrick Lencioni's 5 Dysfunctions of a Team